Welcome, everybody, to the Sooners Extra podcast. Jenni Carlson here with OU beat writer Colton Sulley. Colton, as we sit here on Thursday morning. Oh, my dog sitting pal just said hello to everybody. Eddie, say hello. I'm not sure he's got any opinions about DeMarco Murray mandating Bedlam football or what's going on with OU softball, but we do. Let's talk about it. Let's start with DeMarco Murray, Colton, because this was a little bit out of the blue. Obviously, DeMarco Murray going through all of the portal and signing day stuff as the head coach or as the running backs coach at Oklahoma. Then on Wednesday night, talk starts to percolate. He might be in line for the Kansas City running back job. And lo and behold, he's gone to the NFL. What's your first blush feeling just about his move to the NFL?
Yeah, I mean, definitely wasn't expecting it to go down yesterday, but this is sort of something that's been, I mean, not with the Chiefs, obviously, but this has sort of been something that DeMarco Murray's been weighing over the last, I would say, 3 years now. I mean, uh, the Dallas Cowboys, I believe, have came calling before. Obviously, two off seasons ago, he almost left for Ohio State, where he has familial ties. OU had to offer him an extension to stay, and then last year he almost left for Penn State, or at least Penn State was extremely interested in him for their opening. So this has sort of been a thing every offseason that we've been having to track with DeMarco. But it's interesting, right? I mean, he's got what I would think is probably at least the most talented or highest upside running backs group the next few seasons. I mean, he returns Xavier Robinson, Torrey Blaylock, the true freshman that was really good last year. They bring in, I believe, the number one running back in the nation in Jonathan Hatton Jr. this year as a freshman. And then they've got the number one running back in the next class committed. So I think there's a lot of factors here. One, I mean, just DeMarco being the OU alum legend that he is, leaving the school for the NFL is a factor. Two, his legacy, what's that going to be like? And I'm sure we'll get into that uh, as coach. But then also three, what effects does this have on recruiting the current roster, and then who are they going to bring in to replace him?
Yeah, I think it is a little bit of a complicated legacy, don't you, Colton? I mean, here you've got one of the great Sooner running backs. I'm going to be writing a little bit about this. Obviously, when you talk about great Sooner running backs, if you're top 15, you're pretty darn good. I think it's pretty safe to say he is in that top 15. And then, he's had a really good track record as a recruiter. I mean, they get Taylor Tatum a couple years ago. Now, this recruit that they've got coming in next. Um, but development and usage and I just that's where the complication comes. They get Jade Knott, the most sought after transfer running back a year ago, get him to Norman, and then basically he's unused. And why that was a little bit of a mystery. It sounded like it was an issue of his ability or willingness to block and do those sorts of things. But, then we see him go to the Senior Bowl and really kind of give people an idea of what he can do. So, yeah, I think it's complicated. His legacy as a running backs coach. I don't think his legacy as a player is in doubt at all. But obviously, who they get to replace him is a great question because got to continue to recruit at a really high level, but develop, I think, is a question. And you looked at a few names. What's your sense? What's your best guess of who they might try to go after here?
I mean, I'm sort of giving up on guessing who Brent Venables is going to hire as assistants. I mean, Lamar Morgan, we'll get into that in a little bit. The former Michigan secondary coach. I don't think anybody had him on their radars for that job, but there are some names that I've been talking to some folks about, and I've heard a little bit about. The first one, and really the most serious one that I sort of have my attention on, is former UCLA head coach Deshaun Foster. I mean, he's looking for a job. OU's looking for a job. I think a lot of fans will hear that name and just remember him by his head coaching tenure with the Bruins this past
Yeah,
season and how
not good.
that went. But he has a really good relationship with Stacey Ford, who's in the OU front office. He was his director of player personnel at UCLA for one season. He was one of the most respected running backs coaches before he got that head coaching job. So that to me is a really interesting name. I think he would bring that recruiting prowess that OU's going to be missing when DeMarco leaves. Couple other names. I mean, a dream candidate, a one that a lot of people are throwing out on social media that I sort of think might be a stretch at this point. Although OU did hire Jason Witten, so anything's
Yeah.
possible. But Tashard Choice, I mean, he obviously spent 2 seasons at OU before he played at Georgia Tech. He's the Detroit Lions running backs coach. So just a couple of names there percolating. I'll probably update that list as this search goes along.
Do you feel like, I mean, I know that there were still great recruits getting brought to Oklahoma, but it was really interesting and frankly concerning to me as I watched what happened with the Oklahoma offense this year. They had a defense that was championship caliber, had a quarterback with an injured hand, a surgically repaired hand. They needed a running game that could help, that could provide John Mateer some cover. And they were hurt, and they had the able bodies that were there were not used. I just wonder, Colton, was there ever going to come a point when some of that, and then also guys that had left having uh good careers or good numbers elsewhere. Was there ever going to come a point when DeMarco Murray started to lose some of the recruiting prowess? Because the results just weren't what people would think. I mean, how could you look at Taylor Tatum and say, man, that worked out great. I mean, and it's not a one-off either. So
Yeah.
that was my question. And is there going to come a point when the recruiting starts to take a turn because guys look at it and say, hold up a second. For Oklahoma's track record, the more recent days, it's just it doesn't look as good. That to me was a little bit of a mystery. And maybe we never saw that happen with DeMarco Murray, but I don't know. That was always sort of a head scratcher to me.
Yeah, and I think throughout his tenure, I think everybody who watched Oklahoma football would agree to a certain extent. Like there were flashes of excellence here and there.
For
I
sure.
think he found some players, whether it be a Tory Blaylock or a Tawi Walker, comes to mind of like players nobody really thought would be anything and then turned out to be something. But then it's those high level recruits that you're talking about that people had such high hopes for, and middling results, I would say. And especially this season, like you said, I mean, you would think, I mean, I know they had a new offensive coordinator. I know they had an offensive line that was relatively young, but you would think when you have a quarterback that has his hand injured, the run game would be a bigger focus and a bigger strength of your team. So it'll be interesting to see where they go forward from here. Obviously, Ben Arbuckle going to be in his second season calling this offense. And so it'll be interesting to see how he pairs with whoever they bring in.
They need a better running game. I don't think there's any doubt about that. All right, we'll continue to follow that. Lots more on Oklahoman.com and the Oklahoman from Colton and I and others. So pay attention, see what we got going on there. But one of the things that has come to fruition is a new defensive backs coach. You mentioned him earlier, Lamar Morgan, coming from Michigan. What's your sense of how he plugs into a defense that's looking to build on what was Brent Venables' best defensive season a year ago?
Yeah, and this is really the first time. I mean, I don't really count Zach Alley. We can debate that if we want, but this is really the first, and I don't count Ted Roof either. But this is really the first.
You
I
don't
would.
count, and you don't count, and you don't count.
I mean, Brent Venables had his guys he brought with him in 2022. Jay Valai was really technically the first assistant to voluntarily leave for another job. I mean, Todd Bates, Miguel Chavis, Brandon Hall, all those guys are still here. James Skalski, all of those guys. So this was a little bit of a different offseason for Brent, I think, having to go replace somebody that he's worked with for such a long time and who had such success with this defense. I mean, Jay Valai, helping guys like Eli Bowen, Cortland Guillory, that's a position group that has a lot of talent and a lot of production returning next season. So, there was a lot of good candidates. You bring in a guy like Lamar Morgan. He wasn't retained at Michigan by the new coaching staff there. Kyle Whittingham bringing over, I believe, somebody from BYU that he had a prior relationship with at Utah. So, but I do think Morgan has a lot of experience. He was the defensive coordinator at Louisiana. He knows obviously how defenses work. He brings a lot of recruiting relationships with OU commits. I've already seen a few sort of come out and say that they already had a relationship with him and they're excited about him. So, I think one thing you could say whatever you want about Brent Venables' hires over the years, but I sort of trust the guy with on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah. And obviously he's taken over a group that's got some great young talent. I mean, you mentioned Bowen, Guillory, they just that's the and they played well last year even with a guy like Gentry Williams hurt. I think the fact that they've got some pieces to build on and can really depth and solidifying all of that, I think that's going to be hugely important. And having somebody from Michigan, a place that aligns in a lot of ways with Oklahoma in terms of kind of recruits, the
Yeah.
expectations, all of those sorts of things. I mean, there's just a lot about the hire that makes a lot of sense. I think it is interesting, though, sort of Valai leaving for the NFL, Murray leaving for the NFL. It's interesting, and not to say it's never happened before, but I wonder how much the current situation with college athletics, with football, with the uncertainty of revenue sharing and NIL and just all the things that now are in play. Is the NFL not easier necessarily, but is it a more comfortable fit for some of these assistants? What do you think? What's your sense of sort of this maybe seeming trend of this?
Yeah, I think it's a real thing. I mean, I think I read a story yesterday that said maybe around 20 college football assistants have left for NFL assistant jobs. I mean, we saw USC's co-defensive coordinator leave for the Washington Commanders. We've seen a bunch of Notre Dame assistants. One of them joining Jeff Hafley's staff in Miami, and the other one joining the new Baltimore staff. I think this is something we're going to see more and more. It obviously kicked off when I believe it was Hafley who left Boston College as a head coach to go be a defensive coordinator in the NFL. And it's for all the reasons you just said, right? I mean, their jobs in a lot of these places have what used to just be coaching practices and watching film and getting guys ready for games has now turned into negotiating NIL contracts and trying to get their own players to stay. And so it's the job. I don't know about easier, but they obviously would have less responsibilities, I think, in the NFL, even if it means taking a pay cut um, from what they're making in college. So it's an interesting trend to keep an eye on, and certainly Oklahoma with what Jay Valai showed he was able to do
Yeah.
with its cornerbacks and the name that DeMarco Murray brings. Those were certainly two guys that NFL teams wanted.
Well, and I think it's again, easier is not maybe the right word, but the uncertainty that exists right now in college football,
Yeah.
what are the rules? What's going to come next? Obviously, it sounds like Oklahoma has figured out some of the inner workings to make it more manageable when it comes to player evaluations, to the transfer portal. A lot of those things, it feels like Oklahoma has got some systems that, I mean, I'm not saying that they're alone, but it does feel like they may have some things in their infrastructure that make the job not as complicated as it is at other places, but still the unknown exists everywhere and not sort of knowing what's happening next and, what is this going to mean if this happens or that happens. So I do think that, if you go to the NFL, you're probably going to be working as many hours, if not more, but it's going to just be about football. It's not going to be about we don't know if this contract is enough because we don't know what so and so's offering. We don't know if this guy's going to walk out the door or if we're going to have like they at least know who's on their roster in the NFL. In college
And the
game, it
hours
feels,
of recruiting high schoolers too and traveling and all of that,
yeah,
maintaining
yeah.
all those relationships. I can definitely see it why, more guys are doing taking that route.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing and one worth watching. And yeah, who thought that coaching NFL would be quote unquote easier than college football? So there you go. Okay, so hey, we had a little Bedlam news break this week, almost I think unexpectedly. Norman City Council meeting this week. The mayor of
Yeah.
Norman steps up and says, "Hey, I want legislation, and so does the Stillwater mayor, that Bedlam football must happen annually." What do you know about this, Colton?
Yeah, I'm actually filing a story on this as we speak. I talked to Mayor Stephen Tyler Holman this morning about this, and it really sort of started as a joke and just for fun. I mean, him and Stillwater Mayor Will Joyce were at the Oklahoma Municipal League Congress of Mayors in Oklahoma City last week. It's a 2-day event where, a bunch of mayors from all the cities in Oklahoma, small towns, big cities, sort of come together and do sort of mock legislature, talk about all sort of economic development issues. And so I believe one day during the event, Will Joyce just sort of walked over to Stephen Tyler Holman. They just were sort of shooting the breeze, much like many Oklahomans do nowadays about Bedlam football. And I believe it was Will Joyce who just sort of told Stephen Tyler Holman, like, what if Bedlam football came back? And they were just sort of joking in this mock legislature about, like, wouldn't it be sort of funny if we, like, put some sort of legislation in front of this body. Well, the room loved it, and it drew applause, passed unanimously without debate. So Tuesday night at the city council meeting, Mayor Holman just sort of mentioned it, and it obviously got a lot of publicity. But I did receive a statement from OU Athletics. They maintain that they've tried to explore options to play this game. I know obviously scheduling is a big piece of this. I believe OU already has a Power Four opponent scheduled every single season until 2031. So
Mhm.
2031 there's an opening there. Maybe that's a possible year that this thing could come back. But both mayors, the mayor of Stillwater, the mayor of Norman, uh, they want it to come back for obvious economic development reasons and just the boom of having another major power game in their cities, much less a rivalry game, and an anticipated return of a rivalry game like this would be. And OU's told Holman, OU has now told us that they're committed to finding a way back to this game, Jenny.
I'm excited. Sign me up for Bedlam, the return of Bedlam. I mean, my feeling is that it wasn't gone forever when we saw the last Bedlam football game a few years ago. But I mean, yeah, you're talking about long-term scheduling, and I understand that, but we've seen scheduling change. I mean, obviously the SEC is adding a ninth conference game. That means some changes in scheduling that way. So how do
And I
you?
believe I haven't been told this by anybody at OU, but I believe because of that change and because of the new rule that the SEC is mandating, you must play one Power Four opponent. I believe I mean, OU could certainly drop some of its games against Utah State or UTEP or New Mexico for Oklahoma State, but I believe it's because of that scheduling thing you're talking about from OU's perspective, at least. And I'm not saying it's right, but like, why would they want to schedule another Power Four opponent on top of the 9-game SEC gauntlet that they're
Mhm.
about to play? So the next opening for when they don't have a non-conference Power Four opponent is 2031.
Yeah. Well, I plan to still be around then, so I wouldn't be opposed to it.
And I also will note, I don't know if this has been mentioned elsewhere, but Mayor Holman did tell me today he doesn't anticipate a state representative picking this up and carrying it forward to the state legislature. So it's mostly in fun. I know he reached out to President Harris like before he came out with this and just was like, just so you know, this is mainly for fun, but both us mayors would really like this to happen. So.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Well, and I think when the news originally broke, it was we're going to propose legislation. My first thought was, listen, I don't know if I want more state leaders involved in more sports in our world. I'm not exactly sure I'm for that, but yeah, I mean, I think the popularity of Bedlam, bringing it back, more good non-conference games. I mean, let's be honest, there was some non-conference stretches this last year that were just abysmal. And the fact that you could offer up Bedlam again, I mean, sign me up and sign up a lot of other people for that. So, yeah, so I think it's going to continue to be a talking point, whether it's mayors or school leaders or, now we've got a new athletic director at Oklahoma and Roger Denny. What does he think? What does he want to do? New football
Well, and
coach at
Eric Morris
LSU.
brought it up in his
Yep.
intro.
Exactly. So we'll see. Well, We don't know about Bedlam, Colton, but we do know about the OU spring game. It is back. The return of the spring game. Is it really going to happen? I mean, maybe that's my inner doubter thinking, but it sounds like they are ready to have a spring game again.
We have no details except for a graphic that OU football posted yesterday, and it says save the date spring game, April 18th, 2026. So not Crimson Combine, not drills and fan activities, but it said the words spring
Spring.
game. So I'm not sure what the format's going to be, but it seems like OU is going to go back to some sort of game format. I mean, we've seen that. We've seen different iterations of that throughout the years, whether it be with Lincoln Riley or Brent Venables. But last year's skills combine, you know, wasn't it was all right. It wasn't the greatest thing in the world, but it would be cool to see it, them line up and at least go through some game like situations.
Yeah. I don't know that anybody feels like you have to have like a four quarters and
No, yeah,
I mean, I
exactly.
don't, yeah, it doesn't have to be a start the clock and four quarters later, everybody's done. Like, I don't think anybody says that that's necessary for a spring game. But yeah, I mean, I think some one-on-one situations, I think having a chance to see, that defense against Mateer,
Well,
whatever.
I think it would just be nice to see, them line up 11 on 11 and see Mateer throw to some of these new receivers,
Yeah.
just to give us a look as just what does
Yeah.
this look like, right?
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. So yeah, sign me up for some 1v1 situations, but you don't need to start the clock and do four quarters, Brent Venables. I'll take a spring half. Can I have a spring half or even a spring quarter? I don't need a spring game. I can just live with something less than that. But I do think it would be good fun to see some of that too. So, all right, so that's football. Lots to talk about, lots still to come. But obviously, it is basketball season, so we've got a lot of percolating news there too. New arena talk. The women still seem to be in line to host a regional, even after a clunker of a loss at Vanderbilt. Men finally squeaked out a win. Can there be more to come from that? Where do you start on basketball, Colton?
Well, I think we need to start with last week's massive news. Oklahoma Supreme Court ruled that the gist of the referendum petition that would have sent the Rock Creek Entertainment District to a public vote, they deemed that was insufficient. So it sounds like, by all accounts, from OU's accounts, that this entertainment district in North Norman's moving forward. At least for now. It would house obviously a new
What
arena
you're about to
for.
say is important, but I'm going to shut my door because my dog thinks what he's saying is important.
You're good. Yeah. I mean, it would house a new arena would house both basketball teams as well as the women's gymnastic team. Uh, so yeah, I mean, lots of opinions about that. I think most believe, uh, whether you're pro or anti-arena, maybe something has to happen to revive Oklahoma basketball. I mean, you and I have talked about just sort of the state of college basketball and especially at OU, just sort of where that's at. So I don't know. We'll see. Maybe it'll generate more excitement. Maybe it won't. But I know both Porter Moser and Jenni Baranczyk and obviously outgoing athletic director Joe Castiglione are pretty excited about it. And obviously Roger Denny has experience um, navigating the complexities of entertainment districts. So we'll keep you updated on that front.
I think it's interesting that, as it relates to Lloyd Noble Center, I mean, there's going to have to be something done to Lloyd Noble
Yeah,
Center
agreed.
or to replace Lloyd Noble Center. Like that's not a forever situation. And so the fact that if you look at it and think, well, something's going to have to be done. I don't know if anybody's looking to spend a bunch of money to renovate that place. I mean, I certainly wouldn't spend a bunch of money renovating that place. So doing something new that maybe is not only a draw for the OU teams that would play there, but could you get more in the way of concerts or shows or different things like that? I don't know that somebody thinking, oh, I get to play at the Lloyd Noble Center is all that great of a thing. And so I think it's there was going to come a finite point for Lloyd Noble Center, And I think if we haven't reached it already, it's definitely close. So they were going to have to do something. I mean, entertainment district or something else, something was going to have to replace Lloyd Noble Center. So the fact that they've got something that maybe is elevated, I know there's a lot of intricacies to the plan, but they were going to have to do something somewhere to better their arena situation.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, I've the last several years I've been at most men's basketball games in the Lloyd Noble Center, and most nights the crowd isn't great. It's dark in there. It's a little sad.
Yeah.
So if there's something that could be done to generate more excitement about the basketball program, I mean, obviously, I think first and foremost, and I believe I said this last podcast, I think winning would help all of this first and
Mhm.
foremost. I think that's
Yep.
probably the biggest thing that would generate more excitement, but I do think it potentially could help having a new exciting venue for these teams.
Well, before we talk about the women, speaking of men and winning, is there a chance that what we saw earlier this week becomes a springboard for the men? Can they maybe rally off a few wins here before the end of the season?
That game was crazy. They barely pulled that one out despite leading by 19 with 3 minutes left, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, it's certainly possible for sure. I mean, they've been in most games. They've been leading at halftime.
Mhm.
Over top 15 teams. A lot of them, Arkansas, Alabama. They should have much more wins than they do, but I don't know. This team is it's something to watch. I mean, they do play LSU, which is probably the worst team in the SEC if it's not Oklahoma. So you could see them maybe winning a game there, but who knows, right? I mean, Porter talked about it after the Vandy game. It just felt like they were trying not to lose because they had lost 9 in a row. They really didn't know what winning felt like after that long of a stretch. So maybe after getting a win, that would, give them some confidence to finish. I believe there's 7 games left. Maybe they go on a win streak here, and maybe Porter Moser shows Roger Denny that he could still be the guy for the job. But I'm not predicting too many more wins here.
I guess maybe I just did something that those of you who work with me will want to call me out on. Can they go on a run? Of course they can. The question is, will they?
Yeah.
That word can is loaded because of course they can, but yeah, I don't know. It feels like to me like while they do have what looks to be winnable games on the schedule,
Yeah.
they're also a team that everybody else is looking at and saying, well, that's a game that's winnable because we're playing Oklahoma.
Yeah.
So it's just it, and I think the problem is Colton, or I mean, I'll get on my men's college basketball is broken soapbox here for a second, but one of the many issues that's going on right now with college basketball is diagnosing what is wrong with the team. We don't even know who all these guys are yet. Like we're still trying to figure out, how they tick and they're trying to figure out how they tick. And so, the intricacies of like figuring out how are you going to avoid another late game collapse when you are literally a brand new team with all new personalities and sensibilities and abilities and I mean it's got to be really hard to figure out something like that in real time. Like, okay, who are we? How do we address this? Where, there used to be a day and age where a team might go through something, but because they all knew each other or the coaches knew, like the leaders have been here for 2 or 3 years, like we know what they're about. We know what, buttons to push in a situation like this. But I just don't, it's a tough situation right now for everybody in college basketball to try to navigate situations like this. And we're seeing it in real time with Oklahoma because seemingly they've got more talent than the record would suggest, but the results just are not there for them.
Yeah. Real quick on the women's side before we talk some softball, I think they're going to be just fine. We just saw them play a stretch where they played multiple top 10 teams and they squeaked out a win over perhaps the best one in South Carolina. But,
Yeah.
losing to Texas by less than 10, showing some fight at the end there, losing to what I think's a top 5 team on the road at Vandy, losing a tough LSU game at home. Those are losses that you can live with. For me, the games that I go back to are the Ole Miss game at home. They probably should have won that one. On the road at Kentucky, they let that one slip away after leading for most of the game. Um, I believe Jenny Bronczek's team's going to be just fine. I think they could probably win. I don't think it's out a stretch to say that they're going to win the rest of their games. Um, they don't have to play any more top 10 teams,
Yeah.
which is a good
Hmm.
thing for them. So I
Yeah.
think they'll be just fine. ESPN's still projecting them to host a tournament game.
Yeah.
And the rest of their schedule looks pretty easy to me.
Yeah, I think that South Carolina win was huge for, when the selection committee's in that room and they start looking at who's going to get to host. I think that, obviously that turned out to be a gauntlet of a few weeks for Bronchek and her group. So if they can just take a deep breath, reset, not let down, because you don't want to have any more situations like you just alluded to, like Ole Miss,
Yeah.
like Kentucky. You got to win games when you're the better team. But I think if they do that, I think what are they 5-5 right now in SEC play?
Yeah.
Um, so I mean, I think there's definitely every opportunity for them to get, up around 10 wins, in that vicinity before the end of the season. And if you get there, I mean, you're looking really good. So yeah, I think they've got a really good chance to be a host again. But they can't have any more oopses. And it feels like those two losses you referred to definitely, stand out as trips and falls, stuff that should not have happened for sure. Okay, softball, you mentioned it. I have to admit, as we're podcasting, I've got a game on my screen. I'm watching it out of one eye while you're talking and saying great stuff. I'm keeping track of games. So
You're not
it is
watching Olympic hockey, Jenny?
I that was an option, but I figured two things at once. It felt a little bit much. Um, so softball is here. OU opened their season in the great state of Arizona, played Arizona State. Heck of a game there, late game comeback. Then they played a three-game series at Arizona. Two pretty good teams. Two teams I think that are top 25 caliber teams. And Oklahoma goes 3-1. I think top headline is the pitching situation, though, Colton, as we found out basically right before Oklahoma hits the road last week that Jen Rocha, the uh, highly successful, highly beloved pitching coach for the Sooners, is on an indefinite leave of absence with a health issue. Carly Keeney has already been brought in as an interim coach. Um, so Rocha not looking to be with the team for a while. Sounds like she's still involved, but all in all, yeah, I thought that Keeney's influence looked to be pretty good opening weekend. What was your sense of her role and the pitchers more at large?
Yeah, for sure. I think I mean, it was opening weekend for one. Two, you don't have your beloved pitching coach in Jen Rocha, like you said. Um, but I thought there were some bright spots, namely Audrey Lowry. I thought she was excellent. I believe she only gave up one earned run in 14 innings, and it was a solo home run. She looked to be obviously more healthy than last year, coming off of a freshman year where we all thought she might, share time with Sam Landry or maybe even surpass Sam Landry. That didn't happen last year. This year, she seems to be, answering a lot of questions about who might be the ace on this team. I'd like to see a little bit more from Sydney Berzon, the LSU transfer. Obviously, Miley, the Ole Miss transfer. I thought she had a really good outing, her first outing, and then obviously had to came in and gave up a barrage of runs the second time she went out there. So it's a work in progress, and then obviously the void that Jen Rocha leaves is quite significant. Jenny, I know you wrote about that yesterday.
Yeah.
What sort of impact does she have? I mean, I know a lot of softball fans are aware of her and JT Gasso, but I feel like it might be just a little underrated how much influence those two have had on these run at championships the last couple of years.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Rocha took over for Melissa Lombardi when Melissa left to take over the Oregon job. Lombardi had been Patty's pitching coach basically since she started. Melissa, very well renowned, developed, tons of arms over the years that were top level All-American type arms. But Jen Rocha, a Sooner in her playing days, comes back home, takes over. We see her develop G. Juarez. We see her develop Alex Storako. Obviously, made really great pitchers like Jordy Ball, Kelly Maxwell even better. Just really good on the technical side, but I think as much as anything, it's her demeanor, her personality, which we saw on a pretty regular basis when she'd go to the circle and, just very calm and very never sort of acting like, the house is on fire, even if the house was on fire. So I think her demeanor was big for the pitchers. And it seems like Carly Keeney may sort of be in that same realm, sort of have a similar personality. But I think Jen Rocha also brought that vibe and that calm to the entire staff, to the entire team. I think Patty and JT and Patty even admitted, hey, we get a little bit fired up, we get after each other. And Patty said Jen was always the one to sort of be the calming force, the more even keeled voice. So I think that that's to be determined. What does that look like moving forward? I think Audrey Lowry brought up the fact that it was great that this young pitching staff, 22 of the 25 innings, I think, Colton, this last weekend that they pitched in the state of Arizona were by freshmen or sophomores, first or second year players.
Yeah.
So a young staff that got tested, and they got tested in a lot of different ways. That was good. But I think this whole team getting tested, this coaching staff getting tested, not having Jen Rocha there, they learned a lot this last weekend. What does it look like? How is it different? How is it similar? So I think that all in all, that was good. I know Patty in the media day. I don't know if you heard her say it, but the lineup for the games that they were supposed to play in Arizona got changed dramatically. A couple
Yeah.
teams that
Yeah.
they were supposed to play suddenly said, we don't want to play OU. And so it ended up being Arizona State one game, 3 games against Arizona. And I think Patty wanted to have some more games in there where she could maybe do some different things with lineups and different things with pitching staff. She didn't have that ability, but I think maybe looking back, this was a weekend that they're going to say, glad we had that. I think they're going to appreciate the fact that they got to really step into the fire, play some good teams, and have to figure out how to operate not only them as players, but them as a staff, them as a team more at large without Jen Rocha being there.
Awesome stuff. Well, I'm looking forward to this weekend. Got more softball on tap in New Mexico. Jenni, thanks for doing this.
All right, thanks, Colin. Thanks to everybody else for hanging out on Sooners Extra with us. Check out all of our OU coverage in the Oklahoman and at oklahoman.com.